Okay, in this video I'm going to show you my favorite devices, or the devices that I'm currently using. I'm going to try to get through this as quickly as possible because I've done this video numerous times already. I'm going to start off with tanks, or RDAs, those type, like basically the attachments that go onto whatever device you're using. The one that I use the most, and I will admit that it's not the best in flavor production, not even probably the best in vapor production, but for me and what I use it for, it's just most convenient for me, and it's the ProTank 2. This one in particular has the attachable, it's a airflow control base. I highly recommend that you get this. It's only $5 and it'll prevent any leaking, because that was a big issue I was having with, you know, in its stock mode, is that it was leaking through that center pin, which this one's a sealed connection, so you don't have to worry about that. It also has the added benefit of having that, where that knurling is, you can move that little ring up and down and restrict the air to have, you know, whatever kind of air flow that you want. It also has a glass tank, and everything can come apart, so it's super easy to clean, and the heads are not only replaceable, but you can rebuild them. The single coils aren't so bad, the dual coils are a pain in the ass, I'm not even gonna lie. When you're buying your coil heads, just make sure that they are from Kanger, because I've seen, and I have, some clones or knockoff versions, and they are not the same. They do not perform the same, they don't look the same, they're just not that good, at least the ones that I have. There was a very, very discernible difference between the two. So that is the ProTank 2. And it also has a you can use your own drip tip, which some of the ProTank versions you cannot, because I believe the ProTank 3 you can't. But neither here nor there. That's what that is. Another thing that I've been liking, I'm not going to touch on this too much because I haven't done a review on it yet, but it's the Typhoon GT clone. I got this particular one from Angel Cigs, which is a great vendor to get things from, especially clones, because unlike Fast Tech, you can get, because like right at the, when you go to the website, right at the top of the page, it'll say like US warehouse, German warehouse. Click the US warehouse, and anything in there will be shipped to you from the US, so it'll drastically decrease the time that you're going to be waiting. Like, I got this within like 5 days of ordering it, compared to Fast Tech, which can be longer than a month. Also, it seems like their products are a lot more, they're a lot better quality than Fast Tech. They're a lot more consistent, because you can get some good things on Fast Tech, but it's really, really hit and miss. And I've had more misses than hits, personally. And anyone I've talked to that's purchased from Angel Cigs has been happy with their devices. So that's just something to keep in mind, and be on the lookout for a more in-depth review on the Typhoon GT clone. Another one that I was using before I got my most recent device, which I cannot use it on, but it's the ProTank 3 Mini. This one honestly works best on an Ego style device, which I actually no longer have because I broke it during one of these many attempts at recording videos. So yeah, I was planning on giving it to my dad anyway if he ever actually tries to vape again, but other than that, it's probably going to collect dust. It's an okay device, and I really liked it when I first got it. I don't know if I just happened to get really good heads the first time. That almost sounded really wrong. But it's just not the same. I do recommend, if you're going to get these, get the 1.5 resistant ohm things, even if you don't like a hotter vape, because I personally like a cooler vape. For whatever reason, the 1.5 seems to perform a lot better than the 2.0, which is what I bought a box. Bleh. The initial device came with a 1.5. When I bought a box to replace it, I got the 2 ohm, and I prefer the 1.5. They're also a pain in the ass to rebuild, because these ones are dual coil. And I believe the ProTank 3 is a dual coil as well. Pain in the ass to rebuild. So that's those. I think that's all the tanks I have besides the RSST, which I really don't use hardly at all, just because I just don't use it. And then every now and then I will drip, or get the urge to drip, so I have a couple of RDAs, I guess you would call them. This first one is my first RDA, or it's not my first, but it's the first that it was my, I don't know how to put it. I purchased this a long time ago, and it's the only one that's withstood the test of time. But it's a Trident clone. This one I got from FastTech as well. It's the 14 karat one. I can't find, I think this might be the drip tip that came with it. It looks about right. I'm pretty sure it is. And it looks like that. I did a review on this, going over the weird, wonky, supposed airflow control feature on it, which really doesn't exist. It also doesn't work very well for dual coils because it only has one hole on the outside casing, which is stupid, and then 3 holes inside that are right next to each other. The point of that, I have no idea. But it's a well-made device in single coil mode, which I actually prefer anyway. It works fairly well. And those are new stainless screws, or stainless steel screws. I knew that didn't sound right. I got those from eBay because the screws that came with it were not stainless steel and they rusted, which I wish they would stop. I mean, how expensive can it be to add stainless steel screws to an all stainless steel device? Like, it doesn't make sense putting screws that aren't in with something that is. It just doesn't make sense, especially when you're going to be putting juice in it or near it. But anyway, that's the Trident clone. I got that from FastTech. If I can remember to put the link below to the specific one, because there's always like 5 billion versions of the same thing on FastTech. I'll put it below. And then this one, I can't find the drip tip that came with it, but it looked like a pipe. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Yeah, I have really no idea where it went, but it looked like a tailpipe that was like slanted. And this one I got from a local brick and mortar, and it's an Omega clone. I paid way more than what they paid for it, which, I mean, you expect a markup of some sort, because, you know, they gotta make money too, but it was ridiculous. It was $666, which I don't like that number. That's how much it was on FastTech, which I'm like 98% positive that's where they got it from, and they sold it for like 25 bucks there. It's like 20 or 25, something ridiculous. But anyway, I'm still not completely sure if I like this or not, because in its stock form, it was giving me issues as far as dual coils went. I kept getting shorts and stuff. But I've since replaced the screws with those stainless steel screws for the same reason as I did the Trident. And, I mean, the first build I did with the new screws was completely fine. So it was either a really, really big coincidence or the screws were stupid. So that's working well now, and I do like the fact that you can use it in dual coil or single coil mode, because it has 3 different holes that you can move, you know, to adjust how big the holes are, and to adjust which hole is blocked or blocked at all, and then the holes around, you know, near your coils. So you can legitimately use this right out of the box in dual coil mode. You don't have to alter it or anything like that. And, you know, it does feel pretty sturdy for a knockoff. You know, it's not chintzy metal or anything like that. And it did not rust. The only thing that did rust were the screws, which have been replaced. And then this last one is the most sturdy of the 3 that I have. probably because it's the only non-clone I have as far as, you know, my RDAs go. And it's the Igo-L. I got this version because, like I said before, I prefer single coil setups, so I got something that does single coil. And it was super cheap. I got it on eBay for like $10, $11. It did not come with the drip tip, but I have plenty of those, so I didn't really care. And the ones that had drip tips looked like they were fake. So, standard top cap, very, very thick, sturdy metal, all stainless steel. These screws, I believe, came with the device, and they are legitimately stainless steel screws. And it's just a very simple setup. And I got coils in all these devices because I did that yesterday. So the next time I want to drip, I don't have to worry about building a coil. They'll already be ready. Plus I have a lot of juice coming that I'll have to test, so I'll probably be testing it on those. Alright, the next devices I'm going to show you are my mods that I like or use. This Nemesis has been giving me issues ever since I took it apart one of the first times I started recording these series of videos. Basically, I like this, but the bottom switch is really, really finicky. But it's a Nemesis clone I got from Fast Tech. I'll again try to put the exact one below because there's several different versions, and this one is supposed to be the best, even though it's not the most expensive, which is ironic because it's usually the other way around. The reason I like this, to try to be quick about it, is compared to the SmokTech, which I'll get to in a second, it heats up really quickly. I usually don't have issues. I don't know why it's been doing this weird thing, but usually I don't have the issues with it firing, especially since I upgraded this to the magnetic switch. It's just like a little set of magnets you put in, you know, inside of the spring. And it's pretty, I think it looks pretty nice. It's pretty small, it's not super huge, it doesn't feel super heavy. The threading is not bad. It's not like the best, but it's not bad. And it just does what it's supposed to do. This SmokTech Magneto, even though it definitely feels a lot better quality, much better made, it just, I don't know if I'm experiencing what they call voltage drop, but when I push the button, which is kind of stiff, but it's definitely a better setup than my clone, especially without any upgrades or anything. When I push the button, it takes forever for the coil to heat up. Even if I take the same coil from this one and put it on that one and compare it time-wise, the Nemesis heats up way quicker. So I'm guessing that's what they call a voltage drop, and this one seems to have a pretty big one. So that kind of sucks, because other than that, I really like it. I like that it telescopes, which is great. The Nemesis, it doesn't telescope, but it does come with different casings that you could put, because you can make it bigger than this, and I guess you can make it smaller because you can remove this tube, but I don't know what would fit in there. I haven't really messed too much with that because I usually just use 18650s for everything, but it is somewhat adjustable. But this one straight up, you can just screw it and it'll go all the way up to a 18650. It will not fit a kick with an 18650 because it's too big, because it barely honestly fits some of my 18650s just regularly. It does have a pretty nice locking mechanism, and that's another issue I had with the Nemesis. The locking feature is not very good at all, but I don't know. I'm gonna have to mess with this and do some research as to what is going on as far as why is it taking so long. But other than that, it's a good device. And then the device I've been using primarily the last year or so up until recently is the iTaste SVD. And I did a whole video about this. It does variable voltage, variable wattage, it checks your battery, checks the resistance, and it goes from 1.4 is the lowest it'll go as far as what it'll fire, your resistance. And it goes from, I think, 3.0 to 5.5 volts. Hold on. Yeah, it goes from 3 volts to 6 volts. And the variable wattage, honestly, I never use. See, I don't even know how to access it. I mean, I do, but it goes from 3 to 15, but in increments of 5.5. So 3.5, 4, 4.5, which I think is the reason why I don't like variable wattage, because I couldn't find a wattage I liked, and it might have been because it was in between maybe 6.0 and 6.5. Maybe it's 6.3. I don't know. But maybe that's why I don't like it. But I found that I didn't like the variable wattage. I couldn't find a wattage I liked on it. Plus, you know, I changed my heat so much because of the different juices I use. It's really not logical or practical for me to use that feature. For me personally. I know a lot of people like it. I don't. Alright? And the final thing that I'm not going to talk too much about, because I just got it literally like probably less than 2 weeks ago, is the device that is my favorite of everything I've ever used, and it's just like a really good device so far. And it is something I finally bit the bullet on, because it's expensive, but I've been wanting it for a long time, and it's the Provari. And the reason I like this, just to kind of put it in a nutshell, is because, number one, it does what I need it to do. As I said, I don't like variable wattage, so the fact that it doesn't have variable wattage doesn't bother me. It goes from 3 to 6 volts. I believe that's as high as it goes. I don't need it to go any higher than that, so that doesn't bother me. It only goes, I think, 1.1, maybe 1 ohm and lower. I don't need it to fire anything lower than that. If I want that, I have mechs for that, so that part doesn't bother me. And it does, the only thing that's kind of, like, I was worried about is it only has one button to do everything, so you kind of have to wait in between your settings, and if you go past it, then you have to, like, go all the way back, and that kind of sucks, but, you know, it is what it is. Like, that's the worst thing that it does. I don't mind, and I think the one button feature makes it more sturdy and less likely to have problems, because having a bunch of buttons inside the tube, I don't know, I can't explain it in a way that makes sense probably to you, but I'm not saying, I don't know, it doesn't come out right, basically. Like, I don't think you're going to understand what I'm saying, but I can see why they only have one button on here. It's less problems they have to deal with, it's less space that's taking up the inside of the tube, less things they have to seat in there, less things interacting with the screen, but neither here nor there. It does what I need it to do. It feels very solid, very sturdy, and it's very consistent. I never push this button, and not have it fire unless there's something wrong with the coil, which ironically happened several times while filming this, even though it's never happened before. Go figure. Really annoying. But it does what it's supposed to do. It has a lot of protection in it, and I love it for my personal preferences and uses. So that is it. If you have any questions, put them below.